Greetings all, D&Disability here. I'm doing something a little different this week. This is going to be my showcase of the basic fantasy role-playing game. I'm not going to go through everything, as that would take a year, but at least I can cover some of the highlights as to why I use it and why I like using it with my players. As always, full credit to Chris Gonnerman and the lovely team that's been working on this for over the past 15 years. They're awesome. My first reason for enjoying this game actually comes down to the stats. They are relatively low. You don't get the +4s or +5s like you do in some other editions, including 5th edition and 3rd edition and Pathfinder. Mostly the bonuses come down anywhere from 0 to -3 or +3, right? And even then, those outliers, the 2s and 3s, are typically the exception. It's common in my party to have members with +1s, at least several of them, or -1s, but it is rarer to have the +2s and +3s, though they do happen. And this makes the overall math of the game far simpler. The second reason why I like basic fantasy is because of the way really demi-humans are handled in general. It gives you still very much the old school feel of AD&D, but with at least a little bit more structure. Here I'm given a description for each of the races. Then I'm given what restrictions there are, what special abilities there are, and of course their saving throws, which come into really their special abilities in my opinion. One of the other things that makes this a bit more friendly, in my opinion, is the lack of level restrictions. Often, particularly modern players, those who are just starting out, are very frustrated with things like level limits. And as a DM, I am very frustrated with the way, particularly 1st and 2nd edition AD&D are written. There's a lot of stuff buried within the text, and I don't like having to search for it. While not perfect, the basic fantasy RPG does help break out some of those components with these headings. And they do the same thing for halflings and humans as well. And if you're curious, humans get a 10% XP buff. Now, whether or not you think that's equal to, say, being able to play a halfling or an elf and get all of their special abilities, that's up for debate. I use class restrictions, such as this example down here, with far more levity than maybe other DMs might. I think the game is just more fun that way. Speaking of classes, I enjoy the class structure of the game because it maintains the different XP charts for clerics, fighters, thieves, and magic users, the 4 main classes. Indeed, it maintains the 4 main classes. But also, it restricts the level of spells those classes have. This is something I think is a mistake in AD&D, in 1st edition, and even in other versions of D&D, other retro clones that are out there. 7th, 8th, 9th level spells are amazing. They are truly wonderful and powerful things. But at the same time, they are often very, very difficult to handle for neophyte DMs, or DMs like me who are simply just tired of dealing with. Also, all classes, much like AD&D, really kind of curve out around 10th to 13th level, depending on what class you're playing. And I find that that is good because it can give you that 20th level feel of play while still only being 10th to 13th level. Another point about this RPG is skills. Now, we can talk about skill-based systems such as that of Call of Cthulhu, or we can talk about, skill-adapted games like 5th edition. But in an original sense, right, these are the original skills, right? Thieves are the only ones that have them. And keeping in mind that these skills are not the skills of a normal average character, these are basically like supernatural abilities, right? Thieves have an almost inhuman ability to climb walls. It's not that these abilities are banned from any character trying them. Indeed, many of them can. But that gets into the optional rules section, which I'm going to cover at the end of this video. For now, I will say that when I have players that want to play a character that can do anything or do everything, I tell them to just multi-class in the thief, and I, as the DM, am the one making these rolls. It puts the fun of the guesswork, did they succeed, did they fail, or whatever else, it puts that into my hands and into the hands of the narrative, and that way the player doesn't say, oh, well, I rolled a 97 on my hide, I'm not hidden, right? They're reliant on just the information they have. A quick point on encumbrance in this system, which is what I like. Unlike AD&D First Edition, or sometimes other RPGs that use slot systems, this one uses encumbrance not based on weight, like it says here, but it's a combination of weight and physical encumbrance. It's not that 10-foot ladder actually weighs 20 pounds, although it might. It's that it's the equivalent encumbrance of 20 pounds. And while this is not a perfect system, I do think it works relatively well. As anybody who has ever tried to carry around a riding saddle or a pack saddle, right, would agree, they can be difficult to manage at best. A note on spells. While their spell system is not perfect, I do like some of the simplifications that they have made to the AD&D system. First things first, all of these spells can be rolled for randomly. They all, at least for clerics, break down into d8s, and magic users typically break down into d12s, sometimes d10s. Things have been relatively simplified, right? One turn is still 10 minutes, which is awesome, and then one round is the equivalent of about 10 seconds. But all of the casting times are a single round, which is nice, a single round of combat. So you don't have to worry about segments, etc. But you do have to worry about simultaneous action and getting shot while casting your spells, since everything is happening at the same time. And if you're trying to, say, cast Blade Barrier and somebody shoots you in the face, the Blade Barrier is not going to work. A point of contention, maybe, between, say, old school D&D and modern D&D is the use of ascending armor class and its simplicity. Here, we have Basic Fantasy's answer, which is to use ascending armor class, but using different attack matrices that are just tracked kind of further in the book. I agree with what 5th edition and even 3rd edition and 4th edition did with giving these bonuses in the basic class information. I think it's definitely easier to find there, but from the DM's perspective, having all of these bonuses on a single chart like this is much easier to cross-reference. As for saving throws, all of the saving throws are based purely upon your level. You gain your miscellaneous bonuses depending on race or, in theory, situational adjustments, and of course, you just have to roll over the number and you're fine. Typically, I find with saves such as Death Ray, this leads to dwarves basically never failing their saving throws, but that's not always a bad thing. If you want to play a character that just, never fails Death Ray, as an example, or never fails Poison, then, play a dwarf. It works out quite well. Better yet, play a dwarf cleric. One of my final points about this RPG is that monsters are included within the core rulebook. The core rulebook is less than an inch thick. There's a lot packed into it, but from a DM running the game perspective, having everything in one not so ponderous tome is quite nice. If I need to look up something, it's all right there at my fingertips. I don't have to remember, oh, is it in the player's handbook? Is it in the DMG? Like any good RPG system, this one is not spending a ton of time dumping lore or meta-knowledge on you or drowning you in a very specific world, say the same way Shadowrun or Morkborg might. Here, we get an idea for what their wilderness looks like. While I would recommend any DM going out and making their own 2d8 tables to reflect this. I myself have done so, and I've done bigger ones than this. I've done 2d10s, 2d12s, 2d20s, depending on how long they're going to be in an area. I find that this is perfectly serviceable for overland encounters in the wilderness, or if you were just trying to find something to, say, populate a mountain cave. Coming around to the kind of optional rules section. If any of you are interested in this RPG and purely want to play by the book, you can feel free to turn off the show now. That said, for my players, and I think one of the things that gives them a fair bit of enjoyment, is that whenever they start a new character, whether they're first level, whether they're fifth level, I have them roll to see if they start with a random magic item. This means for fighters, as an example, there's a 5% chance per level that they might have a magic sword or magic piece of armor. For magic users, they might have a ring of protection or a magic staff. They also have a chance of starting with scrolls or potions, which can be very useful. And this is a great way to have a character that's left with, say, a family heirloom. If you have a player that, really wants to play a character that was gifted a magic sword or something, right? This is a great way to have that work out. So now on to the 2 rules that I would recommend for anyone playing this system. Number 1 is ability rolls. This takes the place of a skill system for any other class. So while thieves are supernaturally good at climbing and picking locks, etc., I'm happy to give everybody else the equivalent of a first level, right, target, a DC 17 on that, right? If they roll above a 17, you can pick an average lock. Now, you might say, well, they only have a 20%, so isn't that just 5% better than what a first level would have? Sure, but the thief is always going to be a little bit better at doing their thieving stuff than even somebody with a decent bonus, unless they have like a +2 or a +3 to their dexterity or something. But even then, I find that this system works quite well. As the party levels, this number goes down, right? And they will succeed more and fail less. As an example, this led to one of my players having their character try and climb across a pit, trying to climb around the pit, I should say, and they ended up failing their roll and falling in where the thief succeeded, right? They just tried to, oh yeah, the thief did it, I can do it too, and I'm going to emulate that, and they tried, and they then promptly failed and then were attacked and murdered by ghouls. It happens. Now, speaking of death and murder, whenever somebody makes a save against a poison in my games, I do opt, instead of having it be an instant kill, if it is an instant kill poison, some are paralysis, some do other things, it's just blindness, I do opt to have it do d6 points of damage for 6 rounds. So that way, if nothing else, it still very well could be death. You could kill a first level, second, or even, fourth level character with that pretty easily. But it does give them the chance to brute force heal through it if they have the healing magic. Or if they just happen to get lucky and roll all ones, a 7 hit point character could somehow survive. That said, the way I handle death in mine is that I don't bother with negative hit points. If you hit 0, great. If you're hit again, that's it. You're dead. So that's the way I handle it. Now I also have a d6 chart that I have them roll on when they drop to see if they actually. So in summary, I would say leaving basic fantasy with its creating a dungeon adventure here is a pretty good synopsis of it. Right? What this game is concerned about is not the most gritty, crunchy, or detailed method of play. What it is concerned with is about putting a game on the table that is fun, that your players can use, that is easy to run, and I think, above all else, it's just detailed enough for you to come back to and have fun with it day in, day out. Alright, so this was my discussion on Basic Fantasy. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. I know there are a bunch of other retro clones, Tunnels and Trolls, Osric. I do love Osric, but the print is so tiny. And, of course, Morkbork is a pet favorite of this channel. But to give my first showcase, I think it really has to be to the game I'm currently playing. Alright, stick around for my video next week. And remember to like, share, and subscribe.